What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be rebuilding Wolverhampton Wonders. Yes, we're rebuilding Wolves after the Gary O'Neill sacking within the Premier League. Now, one thing that I kind of want to achieve with this club is honestly a complete and total rehaul of the squad. So one of the major goals of today's video is going to be trying to bring in as many Wonderkids as we possibly can to ensure a very successful future for the club. And just like last time out, we will be going 5 seasons to see if we can win a Champions League title. And if we do not win a Champions League title within those 5 seasons, we go until we lift that beautiful trophy. But now I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's rebuild. So here we are rebuilding Wolves. Now there's one thing that I want to do right off the rip, which is something that I usually try not to do in the first season of rebuilds. That's actually make a signing. And this signing actually hits home on the Wonderkid emphasis right away. We're bringing in Martin Baturina from Dinamo Zagreb for what will eventually be 18 million pounds. I think that he is going to be a very important player to have centrally and kind of build around early days because, like I said, kind of want to offload everyone and build a whole new squad here. So as we can see here, Martin Baturina within the starting 11, the only actual non-Wolves player. Everyone else is an actual Wolves player. We're going to be rocking my 4-3-3 Mando, which I dropped earlier on in the week, and I've actually been doing some of the testing for that tactic within this rebuild as well. Now, everyone that you see around Martin Baturina eventually will be gone. Yes, that includes Guedes, that includes Andre, João Gomez, Cunha. The only one that I might keep around just because I really do like him is Mr. Ryan Aït-Nouri, and I believe that, I mean, for early days, he's going to be one heck of a left back to have. But being that in reality, this Wolves side is struggling big time, the goal first season kind of is just to finish mid-table, maybe sneak into like a Europa Conference League spot. I think that's pretty realistic. It's going to be kind of difficult to do so with injuries already to not only Tati, Sarabia, Matheus Cunha, but also Jose Sa, who's going to be out for 3 weeks to 2 months. So John Stone is going to have to be our main goalkeeper most likely during that period. But let's go ahead, simulate season 1 and see how we get on. Alright, so season 1 done and dusted. How did we do? We finished in 6th place, finishing in a Champions League spot, which is actually pretty crazy how we did finish in a Champions League spot. And it's because there is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 English clubs in European competition in this coming season. There will be 1 in the Conference League. There's going to be 3 in the Europa League, and then the rest of us are going to be in the Champions League. It is going to be a pretty important season for English clubs. But overall, I mean, finishing 6th in our first season, definitely a welcome surprise. Like I said, I thought that we would kind of be aiming for this Conference League spot, but I mean, sneaking into the Champions League, that definitely works as well because we get a boatload of money and a boost in reputation. Now, during this season, we were struggling a lot with injuries and also lack of goal creation just because this side isn't really where I need it to be to get the most out of this tactic yet. So I actually went and brought in a January transfer. For 575k, I went and got Luka Jovic, and honestly, he actually contributed pretty well. Because when we go to look at the numbers for everyone over the season, Martin Baturina was by far and away our best player. 13 goals, 12 assists. Cunha, 13 goals, 4 assists. But then you see Luka Jovic here. Only started 9 games, came off the bench 6 times, but he had 7 goals and 4 assists. So if he was here the whole season, we probably could have pushed for a top 4 spot based on if he was actually playing like that the entire season for us. But also what is nice to see is not only is Martin Baturina one of our top performers as well as Luka Jovic in that short amount of time, but Ryan Aït-Nouri kind of drilling home why I want to keep him around. He was the only other player that averaged over a 7.0 rating. So I'm hoping that we are going to be able to keep him around for a long while. But everyone else, they didn't really seem to fit in with the system that I want to run, so we are probably going to move on from a majority of them, and a lot of them that you can probably see here, they are indeed wanted, so we are probably going to try and cash in on them and have a boatload of money to utilize to bring in everyone that we actually want to have and build this team around. But real quickly, before we get into next season, look at the finances as well. One of the major wins that we had towards the end of the season was against Arsenal. We absolutely dominated, ended up winning 5-2, got goal contributions from a couple different players, but Martin Batterina had an unbelievable game. A goal, 2 assists, I believe. He was absolutely fantastic, and honestly exactly what we needed from him when we brought him in for what will eventually be 18 million pounds. So that early building block already showing that he was definitely the right choice to bring in, and definitely going to be one of the players to watch throughout this rebuild for a potentially rebuild player of the save. And for those of you that may be new and not know what Rebuild Player of the Save is, we are going to be giving out an award at the end of the rebuild to the best performer from today's rebuild, and then right before FM25 releases, we will be giving out an award for the Rebuild Player of the Year that all of you will vote for in polls here on YouTube. But now let's talk about the transfer budget for next season. As of right now, it sits at 58.6 million pounds. I have a feeling that once I have kind of gotten rid of everyone that I want to get rid of, or at least as many as I can get rid of, it'll definitely be sitting around 150 to 200 million pounds, especially dependent on what we get for a player like Matheus Cunha. That is probably going to be the most important sale to kind of fund what I want to do with the side. And we are going to be spending a lot of money. We're also going to be utilizing installments to where we can make sure we get those players that we need, because we will be able to pay it over time with the success that we hopefully do have with this side. But now let's go ahead and move on to Season 2. So with the outs, like I said, we are going to probably be making quite a bit of money, and we actually ended up making 216 million pounds from all of the sales. So we're going to kind of run through these players pretty quickly here. Ended up selling Sasha Kalajic to Bologna for 6.75 million. We sold Hwang Hee-chan to Everton for 15 million. Yersa Mosquera was sold to Brest for 400k on an expiring contract. Sam Johnstone was sold to Arsenal for 15 million to be their backup keeper. Andre was actually sold to Man United for what will end up being 43 million. Jean-Rickner Bellegarde was sold to Villarreal for 12 million. And then here we have one of the big ones, Matheus Cunha to Al Ahly for 55 million. Followed by another big one, and Gonçalo Guedes also to Al Ahly for 25 million. Matt Doherty left for Espanyol for 3.7. Joao Gomez left for Al Nassr for what will end up being 47 million. And Keanu Hoover ended up going back to Ajax for what will be 8.75 million. So as we can see, quite the number of players going out. We also had quite the number of players coming in with both not only the Wonderkids that I want to make sure we're bringing into this side, but also some veterans to kind of help make sure that we have that squad depth that we do indeed need. So first up was Sverre Halset-Nijpen from Rosenborg for around 5.75 million. Going to be a great addition to the midfield. Brought in one of the best mentality and versatile players from the Premier League in Tyler Adams for 31.5 million. I think that he's going to be a pretty good leader within this locker room. We then got our first truly attacking wonderkid, Andreas Sheldrup from Benfica for 19.25 million. I think that he's going to be an absolute beast off the wing, or if he ever does play up top for us. We ended up bringing in Renato Sanchez on a free, so kind of bringing in one of those traditional Portuguese type signings here at Wolves. We for sure needed some new center backs after Craig Dawson retiring and us moving on from a couple other players, so we went for 2 French center backs. One is Maxence Lacroix, I believe that's how you say his last name, from Crystal Palace for around 40 million. We then went and also got Anthony Rouault from Stuttgart for around 29.5 million. I believe he's going to be a very solid option for us as well. And then we kept on continuing down that Portuguese wonderkid route. We went and got João Neves from PSG for around 54 million. Absolute bargain in my opinion. I think he's going to be an absolutely fantastic player for us. We then went to Braga and for 28 million got Roger Fernandez. He is going to be a pretty important player, I have a feeling, because already after 4 games, he has 6 goals and 4 assists. So 10 goal contributions from a 19-year-old in the Premier League already is pretty insane. We then went and got Elias Hilaire for 22.5 million from Galatasaray to kind of complement what Ryan Aït-Nouri does at left back. So they're going to be pretty creative and pretty sound defensively as well. I then returned to Stuttgart to get Dan Axel Zagadou, Rouault's teammate, for around 10 million pounds. So we have some pretty solid defensive options back there. I then went and got 2 cheap goalkeeping options, one for now and then one for the future that we're going to develop on a loan. The one for now is Vanja Milinkovic-Savic. Really like what he offers. He's a big guy at 6'8". Absolutely love that. So hopefully he can put in some big time performances for us. And then I went and got Wonderkid Guilherme Restes from Toulouse, who we are loaning back to them to get some playing time, play Vanya for right now, and hopefully he can develop into what I know he can become. I've always wanted to have him in a save and or rebuild, so finally do have him. And both goalkeepers were signed for a combined total of 15 million, so I think that's kind of a bargain right there for those two. And then finally we have the last signing here, the most expensive one, Evan Ferguson, gonna eventually be 134 million pounds in total. Kind of crazy money, but hopefully he can make it worth our while. He's definitely going to be a player that we need to develop essentially into like our own type of Erling Haaland. So hopefully with the options that he has around him to get him the ball, he is going to be one heck of a player for us. Now, for me personally, this would probably be our strongest 11 that I would try and play game in, game out, make sure everyone's growing, kind of rotate players in and out within the competitions as we are going to be in the Champions League this season. But I think we are building one heck of a group, and this side definitely fits what I want to do more so than the previous side. They're going to need some time to develop and make sure that they keep on growing, so there might be some growing pains over time, but I definitely think within 5 to 7 seasons, we will be able to lift that Champions League title. And speaking of the Champions League, we have our schedule, and our first time around in the Champions League, we will be playing against Bodo Glimt, Fenerbahce, Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, Hoffenheim, Sporting, Real Madrid, and Villarreal. I am really wanting to know how we are playing against 3 different German clubs. It's very interesting, but I guess it was due to what pot they were in. So hopefully we can get through this schedule. We have some pretty challenging clubs in there, such as Bayern Munich, such as Dortmund and Real Madrid. Unfortunately, we do have to play Real Madrid away, as well as Dortmund away, but we do get to play Bayern at home, as well as Sporting at home. So hopefully we can make the Mono a fortress for us. But now I guess with all that being taken care of, let's go ahead, simulate Season 2, and see how we get on. Alright, Season 2 done and dusted, hoping for a respectable season as this is a young group, so probably will be some growing pains in there. But how did we do? We ended up finishing in 5th in the league this time actually, so a spot higher. We got to the quarterfinals of the Champions League, got knocked out by Barcelona, quarterfinals of the FA Cup, knocked out by Man U, and knocked out in the 3rd round of the Carabao Cup by Tottenham. Now looking at our Champions League schedule, it actually went way better than I thought it was going to. We beat Bodo, we ended up actually losing to Fenerbahce, but beat Bayern Munich at home, which is great, beat Dortmund in Dortmund, beat Hoffenheim as well, and Sporting, lost to Real Madrid, gee, imagine that, they're a super team, and then we beat Villarreal. We then matched up against Man United in the round of 16, went through on pens, and then lost 4-2 on aggregate to Barcelona. But I mean, hey, for our first time around with such a young group, so being that this was our first time around with such a young group, I think that this is actually a pretty good starting point. Hopefully we can potentially get to a semifinal next season once everyone's kind of started to develop even more, maybe bring in some better players as well, not only depth-wise, but potentially to improve that starting 11 as well. But overall, when looking at the numbers, we did pretty solid. Evan Ferguson led the way with 21 goals, so I mean, for his first season where he is kind of the main guy, definitely a okay return. Hopefully it can definitely improve in the future, as we'll need it to justify that price tag. Joao Neves though with 17 goals. You have Renato Sanchez, great squad option there, 14 goals. Sheldrup 11 and 12. You got Roger Fernandez 10 and 6, so kind of fell off, but it looks like he didn't play all too much. It looks like he probably had an injury. And then Martin Badarina with 10 and 19. So once again, Martin Badarina really showing what he is capable of, but average rating wise, best performer still, even though he didn't play a whole heck of a lot of games, probably due to injury, was Roger Fernandez on a 7.19. So that's lovely to see. Now, a match I want to highlight this time around is our match against Bayern Munich, where we ended up beating them 3-1, and our midfield really put on a show. It was Badarina as well as Renato Sanchez and Joao Neves. The midfield, I feel like, is going to be one of our stronger areas in this side. I think that we have built a very good core there. And I mean, with the youngsters and depth that we have, it definitely shows already. But going into Season 3, what type of money do we have? We have £99.6 million. We don't have a lot of wiggle room in the budget, but maybe we'll sell some more players to kind of make it work. We will see how that goes. But I think that we are going to try and start bringing in some heavy hitters now. Not sure as to who yet, but being that we are in the Champions League once again, hopefully that can help us land a big time signing. Gonna try and shoot for a Portuguese defender most likely, but we'll see how that goes. But now let's go ahead and move on to season 3. All right, so transfers out this time around made £93 million. And I think with the sales that we had, with freeing up that wage budget, that's definitely where it helped us most. So we actually ended up cashing in on Luka Jovic for £10 million. So signing him for $500K, cashing in on him for £10 million, that is some darn good business right there. Tommy Doyle's going to join Joao Gomez at Al Nassr for around $15 million. Nelson Semedo's going to AS Roma for what will end up being $21 million. Rodrigo Gomez is heading to Bayer Leverkusen for what will eventually end up being $19 million. Jose Sa's actually going to Al Fasili for what will eventually be $1.3 million. And then Totti is going to Al Ittihad for $31 million. This time around, we only brought in 3 players, but focused defensively, and then one is actually on a loan that I potentially might end up signing on a permanent transfer, dependent on how he does. So the first signing was a Wonderkid defender, Jarell Hato. It'll end up being around £90 million, so quite a pretty penny for a defender, but with the versatility that he offers, I'm actually okay with it, and I think that he is one heck of a player as well for what he can do. I've had him multiple times throughout the years as well. Then I went and got one of everyone's favorite Wonderkid defenders, Giorgio Scalvini from Atalanta. It'll eventually be £78 million. Was really surprised we had to spend less to get him than Jarell Hato. But I mean, he is essentially going to be our rock in the back. I don't think he is ever going to leave us. Hopefully he doesn't. And I think that, I mean, especially mental-wise, we have one of the strongest mental and smartest players potentially back there. At just 22 years of age, he is going to be our future at the back. And then our lone player, I needed some options up front for depth because of injuries. As, I mean, with the latest update, there's been a lot of injuries and a lot of suspensions now. Don't understand why, but there is. But I ended up bringing in Joao Felix, as we can see here, on a loan. We have the potential ability to buy him for £35 million. So if he ends up impressing, we will definitely bring him in. Now, this currently, I believe, is the best 11 with this group and this system. Unfortunately, we're going to be missing Evan Ferguson for a little bit here at the beginning of the season. Hopefully, it doesn't derail us too much. However, as we can see here, we are having a very rough start to the season. It is only 3 games, but we are 0-1-2. So after getting smacked by Arsenal, hopefully we wake up at some point, and hopefully we can at least finish, I'd say, 10th and above. I mean, like I said, we'll probably have some growing pains with how young this group is, but we are once again in the Champions League. So what is our schedule like there? All right, so look at the schedule. Honestly, pretty favorable. I think that we should go through comfortably. We got Dynamo Kyiv, Anderlecht, Man United, Feyenoord, FC Basel, Napoli, Bruneri is Inter Milan, and then Galatasaray. Now, honestly, out of the places that I would not want to go, we're only going to one of them. So, thankfully, we get to play Galatasaray at home, Napoli at home, Basel at home, as well as Man U. They all have very good supporter groups, so I'm glad that we get to play those games at home at the Molineux. But, alright, with all that being covered, let's go ahead and simulate through Season 3. And what we do simulate here through Season 3, I'm going to give you some facts here about the Wolverhampton Wanderers. So, one thing that I honestly did not know is that they were runners-up in the very first UEFA Cup, which is now the Europa League. They ended up being runners-up to none other than Tottenham in 1972. They also enjoyed their best success through the 1950s, which they were absolutely dominant. And also, they had a series called the Floodlit Friendlies, where they played against some high-profile clubs within the 1950s that eventually ended up leading to the creation of the Europa League and the Champions League. And lastly, Wolves are owned by one of the very few still remaining Chinese ownership groups. When the Chinese Super League was kind of being founded and really pushing to bring in big time players and grow the game in China, they ended up buying clubs over in Europe, one of those being Inter Milan, another being Wolves. And Wolves is still one of the very few clubs still owned by Chinese ownership. But now that it's done simulating, let's go ahead and get back to the rebuild, shall we? All right, so season 3, done and dusted. How did we end up doing? We ended up finishing in 9th. Just like I said, we would have some growing pains. Unfortunately, it happened in season 3. And I do notice that we do have a UCL here right next to our name, which that can only mean one thing, being that we finished in 9th. And that one thing is that we won the Champions League, which we won it over Arsenal. And honestly, 3-1 win over Arsenal, I will most definitely take that. We also got to a quarterfinal of the FA Cup, and we got knocked out in the 4th round of the Carabao Cup. So we made it one round further, at least in the Carabao Cup. Worst performance in the league, though. So gonna guess that is definitely down to suspensions as well as injuries, potential underperformance. Now, when looking at the numbers, I definitely see that we probably not only had injury issues with some of the players, but also that we did kind of underperform when it comes to the league. However, Evan Ferguson upped his goal tally, up to 33 goals this season. Roger Fernandez, 15 and 17, putting on a show again, once again, though, injured. Thankfully, it was in that Arsenal game, though. So, thankfully, he at least got to play some of that. But Andreas Sheldrup, 15 and 14. Joao Neves with 11 and 12. Giorgio Scalvini with 10 goals in his first season with us. Assist-wise, Roger Fernandez leading the way. Sheldrup there at 14. Hilaire with 13. Neves with 12. Badarina, once again, now playing less games, being that everyone's kind of developing, getting pretty good. He had 9 goals, 11 assists this time around. And Ryan Nori, once again, a player who is injured, with 10 assists. Average rating-wise, the best performing player, once again, Roger Fernandez. The match showcase this time around, of course, is going to be that Champions League final where we actually went down 4 minutes in by a goal through Gabriel Jesus from Arsenal, but we ended up winning 3-1, goals from Ferguson as well as Joao Hato and Renato Sanchez. So getting goals from everywhere, including our depth, which is absolutely fantastic to see. Now, when it comes to finances, Now, when it comes to the transfer budget for Season 4, being that we just won a Champions League, probably going to be a little bit of a boost there for us. And it is going to be £108.5 million. We will have around $200K in the wage budget. Probably this is going to be the season where we bring in the heavy hitter. I think that bringing in Joao Hato, Scalvini, those were like some of the most key signings we probably could make for this season at the back. Yes, growing pains happen, injuries happen, suspensions within the league, but it helped us win the Champions League. One thing I will have to monitor is our overall balance, but being that we are going to be in the Champions League and hopefully doing well once again within the league, then we should see that climb back into the black instead of being in the red. Also, potentially with some player sales as well. So hopefully we can use this transfer budget to bring in a heavy hitter. So, I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and head in to Season 4. Alright, so transfers. On the outs, we made £97 million this time around. Sold some players that I didn't really expect to sell, but I was like, you know what? These are some pretty decent offers on certain players, so might as well go ahead. Others just kind of wanted to leave. One of those that wanted to leave being Mario Lemina. He's going to Al Shabab for $1.8 million. Another wanting to leave going to Damak for $6 million is Dan Axel Zagadou. Then a player that I didn't want to sell as he had become our club captain was Tyler Adams. He ended up wanting to leave for some more playing time, so we sold him for $55 million to Al Ali. He also wanted that payday as he's now making $800K a week. Also ended up selling Santiago Bueno to Auxerre for $2.6 million. And then another player that I didn't really want to lose, but he was kicking up a hissy fit, Anthony Rouault, eventually rise to $49 million. He's going to Al Hilal, now making $525K per week. But with those sales, it helped fund a couple more signings as well on top of the $108 million that we already had. So around $200 million to spend, and we definitely got to spend in it. One of them was actually kind of an expensive depth signing in Malo Gusto. It'll eventually rise to £30 million, but I think having him and Elias Hilaire on that right side, plus he can move into defensive and central midfield. Very good option for us. I also wasn't too sure about this signing here, but we brought in Cameron Carter-Vickers for $29 million from Celtic. Can never have too much defensive depth, especially with the amount of injuries that we've been having. We then went and got a versatile defender from Arsenal and Ricardo Calafiori for what will eventually be £50 million. Another player like Jiro Hato that can play center back as well as left back, even left wing back and left midfield. We then went and got our first Wonderkids signing that is a new gen, and it is Shota Sato for £5 million from Yokohama F. Marinos. We ended up loaning him back to continue to develop there. I then went and got 3 loan signings actually to help once again with depth. Armando Broja for a depth striker option. Asan Udraugo for defensive midfield, central midfield, as well as left wing option potentially. And another loan kind of like the Joao Felix one where there is the potential to buy this player in Harvey Elliott. It is actually the value for him to potentially buy him is 42 million, not 33 million, but I think we will potentially be triggering his clause that we have in that loan to buy option. I mean, with all the positions he can play and how good of a player he is, hopefully he does perform for us. So you'll notice that that probably wasn't all of our money that we actually ended up bringing in and having at our disposal. That's because there's still one player that I've left out, and it's a heavy hitter and graces the thumbnail of today's video, and we spent 75 million on him up front, which will eventually rise to like 193 million, but it is Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. We brought in Kvaradona. He is going to be vital in this side if we are to, 1, repeat as Champions League champions, but 2, win a Premier League title, which hopefully we can do both, because now that we've won a Champions League, we do only have to go to 5 seasons. So hopefully we can win a Premier League within these final 2 seasons. Looking at the squad, this in my opinion would be our best 11. This is what I would probably play a majority of the time, obviously swapping players in and out with the depth. I think that 2 injuries could potentially hose us early on in the season, as once again, Evan Ferguson is injured to start the season, this time 4 to 6 weeks. Andreas Sheldrup is out 4 to 7. So Kvaradona is going to have a lot on his plate. It's probably honestly going to be a front 3 of him along with Broja, Roger Fernandez, and then most likely Harvey Elliott will probably squeeze in there as well. But Guilherme Restes is here this season. He's already played 4 games as well. So him and Vanya probably going to be splitting time. One be a cup keeper, one be our mainstay keeper for the Prem as well as Champions League. Like I said, we've already played 4 games, 3 of those being within the league, and we currently sit in 3rd. So not too upset about that. We are 2-1-0. Much better start than last season, thankfully. But being that we're in the Champions League once again, here is our schedule. I think it's kind of reminiscent of the previous years. We've got Juve, we've got Red Star and Crvena Zvezda, we got FC Copenhagen, RB Leipzig, AZ Alkmaar, Young Boys, Ajax, and Bayern Munich. This time we have to go to Bayern Munich, unfortunately, so that will probably be a difficult game. So we go to Juve, and then we end at Bayern. So hopefully we get some good performances, and hopefully we can repeat as Champions League champions. I find that pretty hard to do, but hopefully we can do it, especially after bringing in the players that we have brought in. But now let's go ahead, simulate through Season 4 and see how we get on. Alright, so Season 4, done and dusted. How did we do? We repeated as Champions League champions, beating Real Madrid in extra time. Finished 5th in the league, so we definitely did better there. Won the Super Cup as well as the FA Cup, so we did a version of the treble. Got to the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup. I would love to win that trophy. It is avoiding me for some reason, just like it did in the Stoke City rebuild that we just did. So hopefully we can win that one next season in Season 5. But one thing that I want to highlight in the Premier League, so we essentially played as many games as we could. We would have played every game possible if we were all the way to the final of the Carabao Cup. However, Premier League-wise, if we are looking at it, Man United kind of technically, if they didn't slip up here in form, they would have ran away with the title. The reason being, they got knocked out earlier, essentially in every competition that they were in. So I'm almost thinking we need to full send towards the Premier League. I'm not saying like absolutely throw away the Champions League, FA Cup, all that, but potentially if we do get knocked out earlier, hopefully that gives us a way better chance at winning the league like it just did for Man United. But now looking at the numbers for the players, Kvaradona leading the way, 29 goals, 14 assists. Honestly, with how it is these days, that's probably good enough numbers for him to be up for a couple of awards. So we'll probably check that towards the end of season 5 if he was up for any, because I know that some players have been winning awards, such as Roger Fernandez. But Evan Ferguson, 28 goals, so he dipped down again. But I mean, he has a player that can kind of contribute at the same level as him now, so that is nice to have. Harvey Elliott, definitely going to be triggering that buy clause in that loan. 16 goals, 9 assists, started 48 times, and that's 100% down to his versatility at being able to play wherever we need him. Roger Fernandez, once again, 15 goals, 17 assists, fantastic player. Andrei Sheldrup, 15 and 13. Sverre at Nypen, finally really showing up, 13 goals, 10 assists. Broja on loan here, 12 goals and 13 starts, 19 appearances off the bench. We got Badarina, once again, Mr. Consistent, 12 and 12. Assist-wise, we see we've got Malo Gusto in there with 10 as well as Elias Hilaire with 10, which is awesome to see, being that they both play on that right-hand side. Then when it comes to the average rating, Pedro Lima doesn't really count because he only played in 4 games. So it was Kvaradona at 7.35, but right behind him once again being Mr. Consistent, Mr. Roger Fernandez at 7.28. So highlight match this season is, of course, the Champions League final where we beat Real Madrid by a score of 3-2 in extra time, with both teams actually being 100% fit, which was a nice change of scenery because usually we have injuries. But we went up 2-0. Of course, Real Madrid, being Real Madrid, would make it 2-2 to force extra time with goals from Mbappe and Rodrigo. But thankfully, our very first signing with Wolves, Martin Badarina, is the one who will score the game winner. Now, heading into our 5th and final season, we have won the FA Cup, we have won the Super Cup, we have won 2 Champions League titles. Essentially, all we got to do is just win the Premier League as well as the Carabao Cup, so hopefully we can do both of those in season 5, and then we've won the lot. So hopefully we can pull through on that. Financially speaking, transfer-wise, we're going to have £91.6 million. We're going to have £3 million in the wage budget, which is nice to see. So we're moving on up. And I think a majority of this is going to be spent on Wonderkids. For those of you that wish to take over this save, which yes, you can take over the save. I'll be linking my Discord down below in the description. You'll be able to download the rebuild file from the download section within the Discord if you wish to take this over and keep this rebuild going, potentially pushing on to 10 seasons and beyond. So with that being said, let's go ahead, go to season 5 and see what Wonderkids I end up bringing in. Alright, so season 5's here. This time around, we only made around £38.5 million from transfers. The biggest of those being Renato Sanchez going to Leeds United for $34 million. And then the others were some prospects that just were never really going to make it at the Prem level. But we did get to spending, of course, with the transfer budget that we did have. And one player we ended up bringing in permanently was, of course, Harvey Elliott, Mr. Versatility, for £42.5 million. Very happy that he gets to stay here at the club. He was very important last season for us. Then I got to bring in Wonderkids, the first being Ferda Tanriverdi, I believe is how you say his name, from Galatasaray, a Turkish left-wing Wonderkid for around £20 million. We then went to Internacional in Brazil and got Mr. Lima for £12 million. We've loaned him out to Getafe, though. And then he has a Wonderkid teammate joining him at Getafe, Pierre Leverin, who we got from Toulouse for around £58 million when it's all done and dusted, I believe. He's going to be a defensive and central midfielder. We then brought in another French Wonderkid, and Ulysses Jiquel from OGC Nice, loaned him out to Real Valladolid. Brought him in for £38.5 million, though. And then for around £40 million, we brought in a German Wonderkid defender, Ingo Barth from Freiburg, for around $40 million. I think that's pretty good for him because he is going to do a lot of growing. He's a squad player right now. I'm still trying to loan him out currently. But this is how the squad sits in Season 5. We are looking pretty good, looking pretty strong. Of course, we have to start the season with the injury. This time it's to Elias Hilaire, who's waiting treatment for a twisted ankle, so that'll be a couple weeks. And Malo Gusto's also suspended, so someone's going to have to play right back. Don't know who yet. And Roger Fernandez is also coming back from an injury as well. But, I mean, this tactic has proven pretty good for us, so hopefully it can keep on keeping on and bring us some more silverware. Speaking of silverware, we're off to a decent start in the league so far. Through 4 games, we are on 9 points and sitting in 5th. However, we have lost the UEFA Super Cup, and I'm probably blocking it currently, but we have also lost the FA Community Shield. It's not the greatest start trophy-wise. And honestly, when it comes to our Champions League schedule, doesn't get much better. We've got Bayer Leverkusen, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, Shakhtar Donetsk, AC Milan, Arsenal, Juve, and Panathinaikos. In there, the only two games that are not challenging are probably Shakhtar and Panathinaikos. Nothing against those clubs, it's just the other clubs definitely going to be pretty challenging. So hopefully we can get some wins against a couple of these clubs. Hopefully we can do well. Otherwise, I don't think the three-peat is on for the Champions League. Which if we did do that, that'd be absolutely insane. But there is everything covered for Season 5. Let's go ahead, simulate Season 5, and see how we get on with things. Alright, Season 5, done and dusted. How did we do? We won the Premier League. In the last season, we won the Premier League on 88 points, so we did it comfortably, which is very nice to see. And I do know there is a reason as to why we were able to win the Premier League. We did exactly what Man United did. We got knocked out earlier on in these competitions, and that thankfully led us to being able to dominate our way to a Premier League title. I swear the Premier League is one of the toughest leagues to win. I think winning the Champions League now sometimes is easier than the Prem just because of how much money is in that league and how good the teams get. When it comes to the numbers, we did get to see some pretty good performances. Evan Ferguson, 34 goals, 5 assists. We got Roger Fernandez this time scoring a boatload of goals, 20 goals and 6 assists. Varadona fell off, 14 goals, 10 assists. That probably contributed to being knocked out earlier in competitions. Sverre Halseth-Nijpen, 12 goals, 13 assists. Andreas Sheldrup, 12 and 11. Badarina still put up double digits somewhere, this time 10 goals and 7 assists. Then when we look at the assists, we got Harvey Elliott leading the way with assists, 18 of them. The dude is just unbelievable. When it comes to average rating, once again, the highest average rating player is Roger Fernandez. Which with how consistent Roger Fernandez has been, it got me pretty curious about some players and what they've won individually. And I mainly looked at not only him, but Kvaradona. And with what Roger Fernandez did, it's no wonder he's been so consistent. I mean, constantly Team of the Week, Supporters Player of the Year. He's had Young Player of the Year, I think, 2 to 3 times in his time here at Wolves. Absolutely fantastic. Champions League Dream Team as well. But then we look at Kvaradona, and he is absolutely fantastic as well with the accolades. And I mean, he finished 3rd place in the Ballon d'Or. 3rd place, Ballon d'Or, a player at Wolves. That's absolutely amazing. He also won the Goal 50, which is awesome to see. He was shortlisted for FIFA Men's Player of the Year. He finished 3rd in that. And then I believe he won European Men's Player of the Year award as well. So he was absolutely amazing. And there is definitely going to be some big time competition for the Rebuild Player of the Save this time around. And before we do get into that award, there was one last player that I brought in later on in this season, and it was Surajit Pinto. I've never seen a Wonderkid from India, so I had to bring him in for £2.5 million. So you guys will also, who choose to take over, will have a Wonderkid from the nation of India. But all right, it is now time to award the Rebuild Player of the Save, and this time around, it is going to Roger Fernandez, our young Portuguese winger that we brought in from Braga for £28 million. He was absolutely fantastic, ultra consistent. Through 172 games, he had 60 goals and 46 assists. So 106 goal contributions in 172 games from the wing. Pretty darn good. 21 player of the match performances with an average rating of a 7.20. Multiple individual awards, but the major honors won were 2 Champions Leagues, 1 FA Cup, and 1 Premier League title. So there we have it for today's rebuild. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you wish to give this rebuild a go for yourselves and continue this great story here with Wolves, I'll be linking my Discord down below. In the description, you'll be able to download it from the download section of the Discord. And if you did enjoy today's video, please feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribing is 100% free, so on that sub button. Right now, I'll be popping up my most recent video here on the channel, so definitely make sure to check that out. Well, until next time, have a good one. Bye-bye.